Our next speaker is very apposite to the last two presentations. It's Louise Regan, who is a national officer of the National Education Union, the largest education union in England, with 450,000 members. And she is the National Equalities and Membership Officer and sits on the National Officer Body and Executive. And who better person to give a response to those two last reports? Thank you. Louise.
Thanks, Richard, and thanks for inviting me. And I'm truly humbled to be here and to have heard those speeches, I have to say. I want to thank you, as always, Richard, for organising this event. It's a really important event in the calendar. But as I say, with all of our equalities events, UK Disability History Month is an important event, but disability history and our awareness and inclusion theories should be an all year round. You know, we have to keep fighting for that, it is part of everything that we do. I mean, I have no words really to respond to what Jonathan just presented. It was amazing. I have spent my whole teaching career being opposed to labels. I hate labels. I hate the fact that we put people into boxes and that constrains them. We should be liberating all of our young people, and Jonathan is an absolute example of that. I haven't read the book. I'm very pleased you showed it, Richard. I've just written it down. I will buy it. I will read it. That poem was so powerful, and that should be in every school classroom, so that children and young people understand what the situation is for our children and young people. I also just want to briefly, all the speakers have been amazing, but Michelin said something early on about small things. Small things are really important. You know, what the impact that small things have in our schools, in our communities, in our classrooms, in our education settings, have a massive difference in the long-term impact on children and young people. And we have to always remember that inclusion is not just about a child being able to get into a classroom. It's about including them in their communities. It's about including them and allowing them to do all the things that everybody else does. And I do get very fed up when I hear of schools not allowing children to do this, that, or the other, because they say they can't accommodate it. It's not, people should be organising it. If we had a much better social model, we wouldn't even be discussing those things. So just a couple of things really, because I've done a lot of thank yous and a lot of reflecting, but I always end up doing this at UK Disability History Month because you do such amazing things. But I do think it's important that I just express my solidarity and absolute support from the National Education Union. This is absolutely at the heart of our work, and we have to continue to work with you, but and with our education workers to make sure that we embed inclusion across our settings. I think the current crisis has really exposed the huge inequalities in our society. I have been quite shocked. I mean, there was a report last week in The Guardian, which, is shameful. And I think the way that our government has responded and has treated people throughout this crisis has been quite shocking. I'm proud that our union has stood very strong for our members at higher risk. I think the government has tried to move us back to a very medicalised model, has used very medicalised terms. We have really opposed that. We do not believe that those terms should be used. We continue to talk about people at higher risk and members, family members, those at higher risk, and we've challenged the government at every opportunity about that. And the government clearly had a herd immunity policy, and we challenged that as well. It's an absolute disgrace. I mean, the Guardian report last week talked about disabled people being denied access to appropriate medical treatment, ventilators. It is an absolute shame. And we have to keep exposing that and saying that. The language they've used, clinically extremely vulnerable, clinically vulnerable, very medicalised. We don't use those terms in the union. None of us should be using those terms. It's, as I say, a complete opposition to what we would want in terms of a medical versus social model. And we are completely committed to a social model. And also their absolute inability to protect those at higher risk, which I think is shameful. The union is producing guidance regularly for members, and we'll continue to do that. We've got a fantastic national executive member for disabled members, Colleen Johnson. She's held regular Zoom calls. We also have brilliant activists like Richard and others within the union who do fantastic work, giving advice, supporting members, and fighting for what we need to be doing. And as I say, Colleen has also regularly raised issues at a national level and called to account our leadership and made sure we need to be doing what our members need. I'm really pleased to say that at our national executive meeting last week, we reaffirmed our commitment to the social model of disability and the language that we use. And I think that is really, really important. And Colleen really pushed on that. I was lucky. As a trainee teacher, I learned about the social model of disability and inclusive education. In fact, Richard did some training that I attended, which was amazing. But teachers and educators nowadays do not get that training as part of their core commitment. And I think that is something that we really need to start looking at and push on, is that people working in education, it should be a basic requirement that they are trained in inclusive education and the social model of disability. We're also using resources. I will wind up, and please keep a lookout for those, because I think they will be really good. Finally, I would say this: we have a huge amount to learn from the disabled people's movement. You have fought and won so much, but this year has seen unprecedented attacks on disabled people, and we have a duty as allies to stand alongside you in the fight back and to ensure that we truly win your rights. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Louise. And it's great to have the solidarity of a large union of education workers with us on this struggle. And I feel that we're reaching a tipping point, and maybe in the next few years, the cracks that have opened up in education and elsewhere in society will bring to a head the lack of human rights for disabled people.